This is the Georgia Farm Monitor. Since 1966, your source for state and national agribusiness news, and features for farmers and consumers about Georgia's #1 industry, agriculture. The Georgia Farm Monitor is produced by the state's largest general farm organization, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now, here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Bergamy.
Yes, keeping to our word, last week we told you we would see you again, and here we are. So thank you so much for tuning into the show. I'm Ray DeLessio.
And I'm Kenny Bergamy. As always, we've got a lot to get to today. Coming up, we profile yet another ag educator who's making a difference. John Holcomb spends the day with Betts Berry and shows you why she practices what she teaches. Also on the show, the Monitor goes one-on-one with ABAC President Dr. David Bridges, his vision for the future and why the college continues to get more and more popular with each passing year.
And then later, spinach, it's good for the heart and now a breeding ground for heart cells. The amazing discovery that scientists are calling a major medical breakthrough. These stories and so much more starting right now on the Georgia Farm Monitor.
First up, though, a new face you should know. Despite not growing up on the farm, Madison County's Lee Brown developed a passion for agriculture and the cattle industry from an early age. And after decades in the business, he will serve as this year's Georgia Cattlemen's Association state president. Brown recently sat down with the Monitor to share his goals for the upcoming year.
Hi, I'm Lee Brown. I'm from Comer, Georgia. I'm the 2017 Georgia Cattlemen's president. I did not actually grow up in the farming and ranching industry. I got involved through 4-H and livestock, 4-H and FFA livestock. We evolved into a commercial operation where we actually put in embryos for some purebred producers in the state. And then we raised our commercial cattle. Lately we're shipping steers to Iowa to be fed out. Our heifers we retain, breed them, and then put those in bred heifer sales. I was actually involved on the local level for about 15 years. Started at the young age of 24 years old. And then I was challenged by an older gentleman to be involved in the state level. And once I got involved, and the people I met and the people I began to work with and those relationships developed, I realized that it was somewhat of a calling to invest my time back to an industry that had been so good to me. Georgia Cattlemen's does a lot behind the scenes that people do not realize. There's an educational aspect, either through the magazine or through Master Cattlemen's or Beef Cattle Short courses put on by the Extension Service. There's a lot that goes on in Atlanta that we are supporting or opposing to help cattle producers throughout the state who don't have time to go to Atlanta to lobby, who don't have time to go and meet their representatives or senators from their area. I'd also like to see younger, more energetic beef producers to get involved. I think they're missing out on the big picture. I don't think they realize what the value of a membership is. And I understand when you get the millennials starting a career, having a family, and it's hard to juggle all that around. But it's just an investment you have to make if that's where your passion is the beef industry. One of the things that I've done is I've challenged our membership to invest by paying a younger person's membership. Me personally, I have a nephew that's very interested in the cattle industry. I paid his membership, and I'm gonna spend the next year trying to educate him on the value of that membership. At the end of the day, I'm at peace. that's how I wind down every day, is riding pastures or feeding cows, and that's my hobby as well as a living.
And we certainly wish Lee nothing but the best. Now, meantime, some potentially good news for dairy farmers. Published reports say a proposal submitted to the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation by the American Farm Bureau and others would provide a revenue-based insurance option for dairy farmers different from the current margin-based insurance options available. AFBF Market Intelligence Director John Newton explains how the dairy revenue protection insurance concept will work.
For the last year, we've been working on developing this new concept plan of insurance, and it allows a farmer to insure the revenue from sales of milk during a particular quarter. So they would use futures market prices and expected production to identify an expected revenue and then purchase insurance protection on that expected revenue. And if the actual revenue happened to fall below that guarantee, a farmer would receive an indemnity for that.
Currently, insurance programs offered to dairy farmers all use margin-based instruments. Newton says the most successful tools that farmers are utilizing today are revenue-based instruments like the AFBF proposal. Well, last week we brought you the amazing story of Tift County ag teacher Lynn Cook and the influence she has had on generations of students.
Well, this week the Monitor's John Holcomb profiles another ag educator who not only excels in the classroom, but also on the farm.
If you take a quick look around this classroom, you'll notice one very obvious thing, and that this teacher loves agriculture. That teacher? Miss Bets Berry, an amazing woman that gets to do two passions in life, teach and work in agriculture.
I grew up in Chickamauga, Georgia.
Berry decided to stick around in the area after graduating college and became a kindergarten teacher. But after tending to a friend's cattle 37 years ago, a new passion arose, which caused her to give up her teaching job and start her own herd of cattle.
I was at a point in my life where I had no other responsibilities except for myself, and so I just took a leap of faith, borrowed money from the bank, bought the cattle herd, and was in the cattle business, truly not knowing much about it.
Although she grew up around it, it was not a part of her life whenever she was younger.
I was exposed to agriculture through my granddaddy. He had a cattle farm, so I knew a little bit about the farm, but I really was not really engaged in farming as a kid.
Berry since has really grown her farm and even her family. She has two grown sons, David and Will, that help her take care of not only one farm, but two farms, both of which have been passed down for generations.
Both farms, separate farms, have been in my family for about 170 to 185 years, and so there's a real legacy there. 15
years ago, she received a call that would once again bring her back to her first passion, teaching, something she thought would just be temporary.
One of the local school systems needed an ag ed teacher and asked if I would do it. So I did it with the idea that as soon as they found a real ag ed teacher, they'd let me off the hook.
In her class, she covers everything ag, from horticulture to animal science.
We talk about agriculture as a science. We talk about animal agriculture. We talk about crop sciences. We talk about horticulture.
Her mission? To get kids interested in agriculture by making sure they know all aspects of the industry. That includes educating them on all the different ways they can work in ag.
It's such a huge part of our state's economy and our nation's economy, and the career choices are just immense. And that's one of the things that ag ed tries to get students to focus on are career choices.
Amazingly, her work does not stop there. She has been and still is very active in other parts of the industry. She is the first female president of the Georgia Cattlemen's Association. She is currently serving on the Dean's Advisory Council for the University of Georgia's College of Agriculture, and she even helps with other schools in the county with their ag programs.
She goes above and beyond for our school, collaborating, working with our teachers, but also working with high schools in our county.
Reporting in Rock Springs for the Georgia Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
All right, John, great job. When the Monitor continues, wild pig control. In Texas, ag officials there had hoped to use poisonous bait to control that population. What about its use here in Georgia? Hear what one wildlife expert has to say. That is next.
All right, welcome back to the Georgia Farm Monitor. Let's get outside of the studio for just a bit. From forest management to food plots or just general information, the UGA Cooperative Extension for Wildlife Management Field Day here at Poe Plantation in Washington, Georgia had a little bit of everything. But despite the wide variety of topics, each one was carefully chosen. In fact, event coordinators tell me they went to great lengths in order to feature issues that affect participants the most.
You mentioned wildlife and people kind of flock to it. Everybody's interested in some kind of wildlife management, whether it be nuisance control or whether it be they just want to improve their habitat diversity because they want to see more and more animals on their property.
Farmers and ranchers are operating on economic decisions, and sometimes wildlife management they're not always aware of the ways that wildlife management can fit into that. So what we try to do is show them the economically beneficial ways to include wildlife management in the management of their landscape and their property. And more times than not, they're more receptive when they see that.
For this session, the agenda included talks on how to properly manage and develop a wildlife plan. Also, managing wildlife in a pine stand, and for food plots, knowing what to plant, when to plant, and the difference between attraction and supplementation. But rest assured, whenever the subject of wildlife is brought up, one topic that always seems to move to the forefront, especially in the South, is wild pig control.
Wild pigs are a problem no matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to manage for white-tailed deer, quail, whether you're a farmer or whatever. They're a problem. Even there's some parts of the country, they're a big problem in suburban areas. So that one was kind of geared more to just give you the options out there to control them and what you should be doing to actually be effective at your control.
That's a joke I used to tell students at Mississippi State was try to understand their language and negotiate a treaty with the hogs. I don't think that's going to happen. It's more just to get a laugh out of landowners.
But all joking aside, wild pigs are a major issue. In Texas alone, wild pig populations there cause an estimated $52 million a year in damage, prompting the state's ag commissioner to issue an emergency rule in February for the use of warfarin, a human blood thinner often used to kill rats and mice that would help in the attempt to decrease wild pig populations. But then in March, a state district judge issued a restraining order against the use of warfarin bait. Additionally, lawmakers lobbied for a bill calling for more testing, which passed through the Texas House and is now pending in the Senate. As far as the use of poison here in Georgia, probably not, according to Dr. McConnell.
I don't see Georgia getting into that after what happened in Texas. I think what we'll do, hopefully, is let the science guide our decision making. And the science right now, the best available science tells us that the best we can do right now is intensively trap at a large landscape scale and try to have the largest impact on the most acreage as possible. And that's about all we can do right now. And when more research comes out, hopefully we'll follow that.
Meantime, if you're ABAC President Dr. David Bridges, campus life these days is really good. Now in his 12th year as president, well over half of ABAC students are seeking bachelor's degrees, which in turn has a total economic impact of over $330 million on Tifton and the surrounding counties.
However, during a recent visit with the Monitor, Bridges said that's just the tip of the iceberg. The school continues to grow, and no matter how much better things get, he'll never be satisfied.
We've had a really good run, and you know, you're always reluctant to say we've had a really good run because you don't want it to come to an end. We don't plan for it to come to an end, but our focus and strategy has been to shift from being the 2-year college to being the 4-year college, and focus, and we've done that very effectively, and I think that's what you hear the most stories about, and it's really been about focus for us. You know, previously we had students who came here would stay 1 year, 2 years, and then transfer somewhere else. What's happening now is that students are staying with us the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year and earning the bachelor's degree. So we are just reaching that point now where facilities start to become an issue. They are an issue in the agriculture and natural resources area, and we've been trying to address that over the last few years. This past year, this fall, we've got students from 153 of Georgia's 159 counties. We've got students from 270 some odd counties around the country. Florida's our largest out-of-state enrollment state. South Carolina would be number 2, Alabama would be number 3. But just so that people understand, you know, our programs and our ag natural resource programs are our signature programs. 40% of those students in those programs come from north of Macon. We draw students from all over the region and the U.S. And our forestry and wildlife program is probably the one that draws the greatest diversity from across the country. It's really taken shape very quickly. Our new strategic plan calls for comprehensive engagement between students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And so we now have essentially a requirement that bachelor's degree graduates from ABAC must either do an internship, a mentored undergraduate research project, or a study abroad experience. And we make occasional exceptions for students who, you know, are place-bound or already have a family or whatever and have returned to school, but for the most part, all of our students are doing these types of experiences. And it's wonderful. I mean, we had over 200 students this summer out in internships literally around the world. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. And I think the one piece that we're probably missing right now at this point is, frankly, awareness. I think, and we're going to deal with that in the next few months. We have a brief that we have prepared and are looking for someone to help us with a marketing and branding and identity effort. Because our experience shows if we can get you to this campus and show you what we have to offer, we've got you. You will come to school here. Our problem is just not enough people know about us. And so that's I think what will help push us that next level, but I'll never be satisfied. I'll always want us to do better.
Now, if you missed any part of this story or others on today's program, you can still see them in their entirety at our YouTube channel, the Georgia Farm Monitor. Plenty of stuff to choose from there. In fact, the archive goes all the way back to 2009.
And while you're there, keep on clicking, like the Georgia Farm Monitor Facebook page, and send us some feedback as well, folks. If you have a story idea or if you just want to leave us a comment or suggestion, send us a message either on Facebook or at the address you see there on the screen. That is news@farm-monitor.com. Some are calling it a major medical breakthrough. When we come back, how scientists are turning spinach leaves into farms for functioning human heart cells.
So we take spinach leaves and we perfuse them with a detergent that removes all the cellular material from the spinach leaf. What we're left with is the structure that keeps those cells in place, and then we can seed human cells on that structure.
And so the idea here is we have this very thin, flat piece of tissue that already has that vascular network in there, and so we should be able to potentially stack up multiple leaves and create a piece of cardiac tissue. The major limiting factor for tissue engineering a graft and getting it to be into the clinic is the lack of a vascular network. And so techniques can't fabricate microvasculature the way that the body needs it. So without that microvasculature, you lose that oxygen transport. And so as you build a bigger and bigger graft for, say, like a heart attack on a human, you're going to need something fairly large. So without that vascular network, you get a lot of tissue death.
And so our hope is we'll be able to use that vascular system in the spinach leaf to provide the cells that are grown on the leaf with nutrients and oxygen. And so for use in cardiac applications, patients who have had heart attacks or myocardial infarctions, part of the heart no longer contracts. And so what we're trying to do is grow cardiac muscle on these leaves, which then can be perfused with a blood source by the veins that are inside the leaf. And so we can, in theory, sew those veins into the native arteries in the heart and therefore produce a contractile muscle that can replace the infarcted or the dead tissue in the heart.
In terms of trying to accelerate this towards building actual cardiac tissue, we just kind of started looking into whether or not the cardiac cells will attach and will they continue to contract on this spinach leaf, and they do, and they seem to stay contractile for a long period of time. They look and act like normal cardiac cells when they're on there, so in terms of the small amount that we've been working with, it seems to be very promising.
We really believe that this scaffold has the capability to help treat patients. It's still a long ways away, but to think about combining the technology that farmers have been using for thousands of years and growing different crops in the field, to be able to just take something as simple as a spinach leaf, which is an abundant plant, and actually turn that into a tissue that has the potential for blood to flow through it is really very, very exciting, and we hope it's going to be a significant advancement in the field.
Finally today, as we all know, home gardens are a great way to produce healthy foods, but how do you know what to plant on your land?
That's why extension agents at the University of Tennessee are teaming up with home gardeners statewide to test different vegetable varieties. Charles Denny shows us how these citizen scientists are now ag researchers.
Oh sure, you wish your garden looked like this, but take heart, this one was planted by pros. It's UT Ag Research's organic farm in Knoxville. But now you can grow many of these same vegetables on your land. Squash, peppers, tomatoes, and pumpkins. Bounty from a new home garden trial. This past summer, citizen scientists statewide tested many of these varieties.
We want to get more than just what we can do at research stations. We want to know how different cultivars perform in all different parts of the state.
Dr. Natalie Bumgarner and Dr. Virginia Sykes with UT Extension coordinated the program. They say these home gardeners in their own backyards provide valuable research.
Right, yeah, so they were paired comparisons to look at specific attributes like disease resistance or productivity or size, how well they fit in containers.
Then it gives everybody an opportunity to be the researcher and to be a part of this trial, and so we can get many, many more locations than we could ever do alone and really get a fairer evaluation of how these things perform across the state.
This past summer, we had 45 citizen scientists from north of Memphis to Greenville who were part of this program. And UT Extension wants to recruit more gardeners for next year.
Beautiful corn.
Mike Smith of Knoxville says, "Count me in again." He and other volunteers tested UTIA varieties at the Concord United Methodist Community Garden, where they've grown and donated 16,000 pounds of produce to the needy the past few years.
We got 3 different seeds of corn that we've planted, and we can show you those in a little while. We have 3 varieties of tomatoes, 3 varieties of peppers, and we are testing them to see which is sweetest, which produced first, which had the best harvest.
If you're interested in becoming one of these citizen scientists, contact UT Extension in your county. Bumgarner says you don't need a ton of land to take part.
And we're hoping that we get a range of folks, those who have been gardening for 50 years, but also those who might be new to the practice.
The program has 3 steps. Select your trials, grow your garden, and tell us what you think. And when all 3 aspects come together, we've got tasty produce and helpful information.
I like that term, citizen scientist. Yes, yes. That's pretty cool. Hadn't thought of that one.
This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, Charles, very nice job. Thank you so much. And that is going to do it for this week's edition of the Georgia Farm Monitor.
And a reminder for all the latest ag info regarding food, great recipes, and what's happening down on the farm, be sure you check out our Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest pages. You'll stay informed and see what's up in the world of farming and here on the show.
Take care, everybody. We will see you next week right here on the Georgia Farm Monitor.
Have a great week.